Our protagonist is a single young man. 10 years ago, he was just an office worker. As he returned home, ready to finally lay down and rest, an urgent thought shot through his mind. He needed to eat first before surrendering to sleep. He dedicated 2 hours to crafting 3 deliciously balanced meals for himself. But, just as he prepared to devour his meat, slumber overtook him. Awakening from an unexpected nap, he found himself at a banquet, trapped in the body of a child who barely understood the world around him. Before him lay a feast reminiscent of a foreign land. Yet, the words spoken around him resonated with clarity. He realized this was an engagement party and pondered whether it was merely a dream. Resolute, he returned to the table he had set, only to be called away by his father for introductions. It dawned on him this was reality, and he was at a loss for how to introduce himself. In his moment of confusion, an older brother of the family, Eric, stepped in to lend a hand. In this new world, he was known as Gel. After a brief exchange, he inquired about the party. Eric revealed that this was the wedding celebration of their eldest brother. As Gel observed, the family bore the weight of noble lineage, suggesting an impressive background. Despite their current predicament, he sensed that they were well off, and his fears of hunger seemed to dissipate. However, by the next morning, the family returned to stale bread and watery soup. The walls were peeling, and the furniture rotting beneath them. Feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity, Gel sought out Eric, who had just returned from fishing. It was then that he learned the harsh truth. His family was a noble one, but impoverished. The extravagant feast the day before had merely been a facade to uphold their dignity in front of guests. It was a stark reminder of the pride that often accompanies nobility. The culinary delights had been reserved solely for the wedding, and now they were back to the grim reality of dry bread and thin soup. Subsequently, Gel met his other brothers. As each name was called in recognition, he came to understand that theirs was a family of noble status, yet they were far from rich, being the 8th child. He realized he held no special privileges. Determined to learn more about this world, Gel discovered they resided in the capital, the most populous area of the kingdom. A short descent led to the largest trading hub in the nation, and, a bit further south, across the mountains, lay the autonomous region belonging to his family. Feeling as if his life had taken a nosedive, Gel suddenly noticed 3 of his brothers preparing to leave their homeland. They informed him that the estate would be entrusted to the eldest and second brothers, while the younger siblings were advised to depart in search of brighter futures. They could take up arms as soldiers or venture into the life of adventurers. Eric urged Gel not to dawdle any longer, warning that he might regret it later. Determined, Gel set out to find books and educate himself, only to discover they were all rather nonsensical reads. In a moment of serendipity, he stumbled upon a crystal sphere. Inside, he found a piece of paper and decided to read it. It claimed this crystal could determine whether someone possessed magical power, as only 1 in 1,000 could wield magic. Doubtful, he thought he had no chance. Yet, he still placed the sphere on the table, curious to learn more. Since everyone had the opportunity to try, he figured there was nothing to lose. If by some miracle he could become a mage, it would open doors to work for the kingdom. Though skeptical of its authenticity, he resolved to give it a shot. Feeling it was worth the gamble, he slid his hand into the sphere and concentrated. At first, nothing happened, but moments later, the crystal gleamed with a rainbow hue. Reading the paper again, he realized he indeed had a knack for magic. This revelation meant he needed to find someone to properly guide him in his magical pursuits. He searched for more books to study, but found none available. When he asked about them, the elder simply confessed he couldn't read. There aren't any books to learn from. His father wanted him to gather firewood. While in the forest, he tried to practice magic and encountered an older boy. The boy recognized him as the one who had cast magic moments ago. Curiosity sparked, but a tinge of fear washed over him as the boy suddenly appeared. He flicked the stick from Leo's hand, sending a nearby rock crashing down onto a wild boar. It went berserk, and the older boy held Leo back, beginning to teach him how to control magic. With a burst of wind, Leo pushed the boar away, while the boy effortlessly sent it flying several meters. He introduced himself as a former member of the Magic Council. He believed Leo would become a powerful mage, even stronger than him. Afterward, Leo was treated to a meal and offered tea. The boy stored the boar in a bag like some kind of robotic cat. He agreed to teach Leo magic without expecting payment. All he wanted was a disciple. Gel accepted him as a master, so he wanted Leo to start training the next day, warning him not to reveal his magic, as it could lead to a fight over inheritance. Being a child caught in a struggle for inheritance would be incredibly difficult. In short, magic had a greater impact than Gel had imagined. The following day, Gel began his training, and Fep taught him the most basic fundamentals of magic. He had to visualize mana flowing between their bodies. Alfred then explained that each person had a unique mana limit, which couldn't be increased. However, Gel possessed a mana capacity so vast that even Anne Fep could not reach it. Meanwhile, the older brother and their father noticed Gel's position had changed, suspecting Leo was up to something. They thought he felt insecure due to his lack of magic, but after a few days, he learned the basics of using magic. Alfred brought back a basket of vegetables for him to take home. He tricked Leo into believing he had foraged them. That night, their mother and sister-in-law recognized his talent for gathering. Their father wondered how he had harvested vegetables from across the river when there was no bridge. This raised concern for the older brother about Gel. A few days later, Alfred took him on a flight to practice his tracking abilities. Leo used a stone and wind magic to strike a bird. They cooked it together. Gel offered a jar of wasabi he had just found, and Anfep eagerly wanted to try it. He ate without realizing its spiciness, leaving Leo terrified. Alfred warned Gel that the forest was very dangerous and advised against entering. Gel admitted he had risked his life to get that wasabi. Alfred explained that the forest was home to many rare materials and herbs, which lured people into danger for profit. Most of them never returned. Gel then mentioned that he had noticed his brother watching him during practice. He suspected his brother was aware of his magic use. He didn't want the burden of inheritance or ruling, as it seemed quite troublesome. Hearing this, Anfep suggested that he could venture out and become an adventurer instead, as he had once been one himself. Later that night, Alfred seemed to be hiding something about his arm from Gel. The next day, Gel brought up the idea of becoming an adventurer to his family. Everyone seemed to like the idea, but their father knew they couldn't afford his training. The following morning, when Gel mentioned it to Anfep, he advised him to reach the largest trade area in the kingdom to study. He also told him he needed to learn flight magic for easier travel. That place allowed trade in everything, so he could sell something to cover his schooling and living expenses. He then showed Gel how to fly by taking him up into the sky. He told him the world was waiting for him. That night, Anfep's condition worsened. The next day, he met Gel and informed him that he would stop teaching him the following day. Gel couldn't accept this. They had only known each other for 2 weeks, but he had no choice but to accept. That night, he overheard his father talking about the recent appearance of undead in the forest. These were the zombies capable of retaining their powers before death, with cold bodies and dulled senses. Their skin would turn pale. Gel recalled that Anfep possessed similar traits. After some time, the undead would lose their minds and become full zombies. He then sought out Anfep and found him. He wanted to bring Anfep back because undead were in the forest, but upon seeing Gel's realization, He confessed he was one of them. Years ago, he had taken on a mission to protect a noble family from monsters. The relentless waves of beasts had overwhelmed him and his forest army, unable to let go of his past. He chose to become undead to find someone to pass on his magic. Once he fulfilled his wish of teaching a worthy disciple, he would finally be free. He had kept this hidden, fearing that Gao would panic and run away upon learning he was undead, but he wanted to ensure that Gao could succeed, so he asked Gao to purify him using the holy magic he had taught him. His time was running out, and he feared becoming brutal and harming humans. He urged Gao to act and to remember everything he had learned over the past 2 weeks. Gao gathered his resolve, determined to purify him as a way to repay him. And Fep recognized Gao as the one he had long sought and wanted him to begin his journey to become a good person. Alfred was then purified and left Gao behind. Don't cry. Many years later, Gao had grown enough to set off for school, and the branch he had planted as a grave marker for Anfep had begun to thrive. He then enrolled in the Magic Academy. Having spent 7 years training and becoming self-sufficient to avoid trouble, he had become quite introverted. He tried to remain calm as he began a new chapter in his life making friends. He stood up to introduce himself, but no one reacted, leaving him feeling a bit embarrassed. That afternoon, he sat alone for lunch, feeling truly isolated. 2 classmates, Lewis and Tina, noticed him as the new student. With his ability to use magic, he matched the level of top adventurers, and even the teachers had little left to teach him. A mutual friend approaches, sensing that befriending Gao could unlock countless benefits. Zhao, already the focus of many eyes, seems to be testing if they're worthy of friendship. This friend believes all 3 are top-tier players in their own right, hoping to catch Gao's attention. He introduces himself as Arwen. Gao, curious and open, wants to try blending in, but just as Zhao stands to speak, the other 3 are being coaxed into a rivalry, each vying to recruit Gao for their team. Later, the teacher warns the class many students won't get family support, so the school encourages monster hunting, but it's dangerous, and groups must stick together. The trio thinks it's time to talk to Gao, but Arwen urges patience. Rushing could waste their efforts. Instead, he plans to outshine Gao by hunting more monsters to catch his eye. When they return, Arwen's group boasts impressive loot. Meanwhile, Gao pulls out a stash of food from his magic bag, feasting generously and leaving some behind. Everyone feels defeated. The skill gap is just too wide. One by one, they give up and leave, while Gao, freshly paid, plans to treat friends to a meal, only to find no one left. That night, Arwen's group is drowning in self-pity. No matter how hard they try, not being the eldest born means no inheritance, no grand legacy. Louis, blessed with the magic power to enhance himself, surpassed both father and elder brother, who now shun her. Tina despises the idea that birth order should steal their dreams. Determined, they resolve to hunt relentlessly to win Gao's notice. Venturing deep into the forest despite the dangers, they find themselves surrounded by a pack of wolves. Nearby, Leo, hunting solo, senses the commotion and rushes to their rescue. Though the trio manages to fend off a few wolves, the beasts are stubborn. Protecting the youngest, Arwen gets injured. Gel arrives just in time, helping them fight and then escorting them to the infirmary to bandage Arwen's wounds. Realizing their vast gap with Gao, they abandon hopes of forming a team. Before Gao can explain, the teacher announces an invitation from the city's leading count to a grand banquet. Everyone assumes the count invited the whole class, but the invitation targets Gao specifically. Still, Arwen clings to hope and strives to impress the count, dreaming of future opportunities. On the night of the banquet, each dresses to impress, eager to witness the count's grace. When the count's gaze falls on Gao, he strides past the trio to meet him directly. He knows Gel's family rarely leaves their territory, crossing the mountain costs dearly. He invites Gel to accompany him for a private talk, and Gel insists on bringing along the 3 friends he hoped to team up with. The Count leads Gel to meet Bran, the kingdom's master sorcerer and Alfred's teacher. Bran is aware Gel has dwelled in Geo's domain for some time, renowned for his tracking magic. Bran reveals it's been 7 years since Alfred's magic signal vanished. Alfred, hailed as one of the kingdom's top 5 mages, dreamt of passing his knowledge to a worthy disciple. Suddenly, Alfred disappeared, leaving behind the very magic bag now in Gel's possession, an artifact only Alfred could entrust to a chosen successor. Bran deduces Gel is the disciple's disciple, hearing how Alfred forced a young boy to perform a cleansing ritual before departing. He acknowledges the harshness, but thanks Gel for granting Alfred peace at last. He wanted to return some of Alfred's belongings kept here. The 3 friends felt lost, unable to understand Gel. Moments later, he dashed out, and they decided not to team up with him to chase a better life. But he longed to join forces with all 3, craving friendship. Then the Count and Bran revealed that for each item he returned, the Count would reward him 1,000 gold coins of fortune. Shocked, Gel learned from Bran that Umfat had a mansion, and the Count wanted him to inherit it. That night, Gel moved into the mansion, feeling its emptiness. So he planned to invite his friends to stay a while. Later, Gel got invited to his brother's wedding and took his friends along. Lewis saw this as his moment to shine, drawing the noble Daewuk's attention. But that flashy outfit only made her lose face. Bran joined the group, having to report back to the capital. Arwen was nervous about flying, fearing a crash. Bran reassured them the ship wouldn't fall easily. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered, and Bran warned they could still fall. A colossal dragon attacked, but just as he spoke, a skeletal dragon appeared. The crew tried calming passengers, assuring them that Bran, the all-powerful mage, would handle this. But he admitted he was out of his league since it was a corpse, and he couldn't use sacred magic. However, he knew Leo could handle it, so he pushed him to fight while he protected the ship. Leo then rushed to the door and cast a flying spell to confront the dragon. Meanwhile, Bran had erected a shield for the ship, leaving Leo to fly around the dragon and focus on gathering his sacred magic to unleash a powerful blow. After a fierce chase, he successfully struck, beginning the purification of the creature. It struggled for a moment longer before finally succumbing. Ran reminded him to gather the dragon's bones. As he collected them, he spotted a red crystal. The group then celebrated, and Bran introduced Gel to his friend, the merchant Ortot. Ortot warned him that shopping in the capital would be challenging, but he would understand once they arrived. They feasted until the next morning, and the ship finally docked at the capital. Upon landing, Bran led the way, leaving Gel's group with Miss Ajute to guide the soldiers. Suddenly, people flocked to find him due to his dragon-slaying feat. The commander informed him that the king was waiting. He was taken to the palace, while his friends went ahead. Gel was ushered in to meet the king. The king noted how young he was, but due to his achievement in slaying the dragon, he would be bestowed the title of Baron. Gel swore an oath to the king. Meanwhile, his friends and Eric were informed by Bran about what would happen to Gel. His friends worried that he might abandon being an adventurer, but Gel only had a title, not land, so it was up to him to decide. Eric was surprised his younger brother would attend a wedding with a title higher than their father's. However, Bran warned that Gel would soon face difficulties as a noble. Gel, at that moment, was selling the dragon bones to the court. The commissioner wanted to reduce his payment to stabilize the treasury since Gel was a citizen and should understand. But the general wanted to give Gel what he deserved for his efforts. The Pope also supported the general's stance to ensure Gel wouldn't lose face. Gel couldn't speak up, and Mr. Ajute informed him that both the Pope and the general backed him to earn his certificate of merits. Meanwhile, the commissioner simply wanted to maintain treasury stability. That afternoon, as Leo was leaving, someone approached wanting to perform for him. The guards chased the person away, and Mr. Ajute explained that such individuals would come to ask favours. They were companions of Gao, and other nobles would try to marry off their daughters to him. So now, he should stay indoors for a while, which is why Mr. Ajute said it would be difficult for him to shop here. Later, he attended Eric's wedding. They faced issues since the family couldn't afford a wedding gift. The eldest brother sent a letter asking their 3 older brothers to buy a gift, but they were all common soldiers and had no money. Plus, wedding gifts had to be expensive to avoid losing face. If the groom's family failed to provide a gift, the count would also lose face because Gel's family was a vassal of the count. They would judge the count for not lending Gel's family money. But everyone knew the reason was that if they borrowed money, they wouldn't know how to repay it. Vel decided he would pay, allowing the wedding to proceed smoothly. Gel realised that becoming a noble was quite troublesome. That afternoon, as he sighed, Mr. Ajute visited to give him the rice he needed. He wanted Gel to call him first if he ever needed help with business in the future. Gel brought his 3 friends back to the mansion to live together and tried to make miso soup with them, since he kept messing it up. He needed their help. He then prepared the soup and left it to ferment. Using magic, he shortened the fermentation time, and after cooking it, he produced the perfect miso soup. He brought the dish to serve Eric's in-laws and received compliments. Meanwhile, the Pope called his granddaughter and informed her that he had found her a fiancé. The Pope then invited Gel to visit, and he prepared a gift for him. He was then introduced to the granddaughter, who introduced herself as Elise. He noticed she had magical abilities, and the Pope revealed that she could use high-level recovery holy magic. She often worked as a healer at the church, and there were other nuns taking care of charity work. With her magic, Elise was known as the Saintess. The Pope didn't want her to work for the church but to live like any other girl. So many families were coming to ask for her hand. If Gel was interested, he would be willing to marry Elise to him. Gel chuckled, saying he was too young for that. If he accepted the engagement, he would only have 3 years left. Part of him laughed, thinking that this engagement was a joke. But the Pope was serious, and he inadvertently accepted the engagement. The Pope had played a bit of a cruel trick by luring him to baptism and then using the engagement to bind him. The reason he chose Gao was that he saw him as someone with foresight, willing to use money for gifts instead of trivial items. Gao then shared with his friends about how he ended up with this engagement. He couldn't understand how he had gotten engaged after just a minute of meeting someone. How could a minute decide who would accompany him for life? But everyone found it normal. His brothers had all met their wives during weddings. He then had his sister-in-law disguise him to go out. He realised that love marriages did not exist in this noble world. He then went out with Arwen, disguising himself as a jester so no one would recognise him. Arwen thought he should try buying something for his future wife. Gel was unsure if Elise genuinely liked the idea of this marriage. As he walked outside, he encountered a young man with a spear at the castle. This was the same person who had recognised him before and fled, which Gel was hoping for. He spoke quietly, as if others around could hear and wanted to be hired by Gel. He then had to teleport back with Arwen, and Eric suggested he should hire some attendants to discreetly handle those people. So, he ended up hiring Arwen. He made another trip to the church, still not believing he had become Gel's servant. Gel returned to the church, trying to avoid the Pope. Elise caught him, dragging him onto the rooftop to ask if his gift had broken. When he asked how she felt about their arranged marriage, she smiled proudly, honoured that her fiancé was a dragon slayer. She understood why the king chose Gel. It was the right decision. 2 girls arriving overheard that Arwen was Gel's steward, and he began boasting how now both served under him, making them his juniors. Later, Arwen helped his sister-in-law and Eric prepare dinner. Gel realized the trick to outshine Arwen was to become his concubine nobleman. Having concubines was normal. Becoming a concubine would surely spark Arwen's jealousy. Meanwhile, Lewis decided to start seducing Gel, but she ended up just hopping around like a goof. Called for dinner by his sister-in-law, Gel left the two girls behind. That night, Louis didn't give up and tried a second attempt to woo Tinan, hoping to make her retreat. She could flaunt her personality, but had to step back to open a dojo, seeking family recognition. Tina was determined to make Gel fall head over heels. Meanwhile, they met the Pope's steward, who arranged a dinner between Gel and Elise. Gel enjoyed a meal crafted by a master chef, but felt the atmosphere was stiff. The steward urged him to gift Elise something. At a jewelry store, Gel found most pieces too flashy. He noticed a simple ring that Elise seemed to like and chose it, but it was the most expensive, adorned with a magical stone. On leaving, Elise thought Gel picked it so she could gain influence over him. Gel had no idea it was a magic ring. He just thought it suited Elise. He noticed that if infused with magic, the ring would glow. Testing this, the ring projected a mesmerizing cosmic scene inside the carriage. Back home, the steward reported to the Pope that Gel treated Elise as a girl, not a saint. Gel, meanwhile, regretted not adding sauce to the meal earlier to make it perfect. The next morning, Arwen asked about the concubine plan, but both agreed there was no rush, they still had time in the team. At the same time, Leo was with Elise. She came to learn more about Gel's true nature. Gel then met the king, who tasked him with slaying another dragon. They needed a plane for resource extraction, but it was the territory of an ancient dragon, only defeatable by mages. This time, a new ally joined Gel and Bran Armstrong, a fierce and passionate warrior true to his name. Upon greeting, Armstrong immediately accepted the mission and pulled both into action. Rancher Gio knew Armstrong looked tough but was reliable. The trio took a flying ship to the dragon's nearby outpost to prepare. Edit informed the friends that Gel had reported the dragon's territory teemed with other monsters. After killing the dragon, they'd have to stay and clear the monsters drawn to the now leaderless land. Everyone connected to Gel, including his friends, had to join. Gel still lacked a personal army. Edit revealed the state planned to grant him the land as his domain, and those often waiting outside that house were potential soldiers. They wanted Arwen to handle recruitment and management since he was Gel's only loyal aide. After recruiting, Arwen and the army arrived as reinforcements. Most soldiers were noble-born sons seeking glory. That night, anxiety filled the air. This might be the group's first real battle. Elise came to learn Gel was guarding the dragon's lair. Gel and his two companions found the dragon. Armstrong donned magical armor and charged into fierce melee. Gel readied his spell, with Bran urging him to unleash a finishing blow before Armstrong's magic armor ran out. They succeeded in slaying the dragon, but the real challenge began. The monstrous horde was approaching in terrifying numbers. Elise tirelessly healed the wounded with magic. Few died because everyone believed the saint's power would save them. The soldiers reported the monstrous numbers, noting that without the three mages outside, they would have already faced defeat. Elise continued to heal, drawing on her ring's magic to replenish her dwindling strength. By nightfall, her magical reserves were nearly exhausted, and fatigue weighed heavily upon her. However, the soldiers learned of her engagement to Gel, who remained on the front lines, bolstering morale with his unwavering presence. She understood that Gel disliked playing the role of a hero, yet he persevered, inspiring her not to lose heart. Using her last ounce of magic, she resorted to a first aid kit to continue her efforts. A soldier reported that their forces were returning from the front, victorious against their foes. Upon hearing that Gio was injured, she rushed out, only to find him safe. Exhausted, she collapsed. When she regained consciousness, she discovered they were together while he recounted how Elise had supported the rear guard. Suddenly, Armstrong arrived, joyously embracing his adopted niece Veo and her companions. He announced his plans to settle in the capital. Having earned 2 dragon-slaying medals and been elevated to the rank of Grand Duke in the merchant city, he insisted that Gao stay behind to train himself. Elise approached, and her friends believed they ought to refrain from competing for his affection in front of the future wife. Yet, Elise heard that he was also betrothed to Tina and Louis. Gao denied it, but she found such arrangements normal, believing that living together would bring joy. Thus, he reluctantly accepted the reality of having 3 wives. Over time, another brother of Gao also married into nobility. Zhao's brother suggested that the main reason nobles agreed to the engagement was to connect with Gao, whose influence had grown significantly. They informed him of an upcoming martial arts tournament where the use of magic would be prohibited. 2 years. Therefore, he needed to participate in sword fighting to maintain his dignity. Meanwhile, the group trained vigorously. Arwen felt at a disadvantage due to his lack of magical enhancement, unable to compete with the 2 girls. Soon after, Gran informed all 3 about the tournament's restrictions on magic. If they were eliminated early, it would reflect poorly on Geo. The 2 girls immediately set to practice, while Eowyn thought he had nothing to lose and chose to relax. However, Bran warned that if he didn't make an effort, he would be expelled. That night, Geo informed the group that Elise would be joining their party, and this year's Knight Commander had withdrawn from the tournament to let the next generation shine. Geo was eager for the tournament, not wishing to embarrass himself. Arwen, inspired, committed to training hard. The following day, he was the most enthusiastic trainer, accustomed to functioning without magic. Geo, on the other hand, struggled. He relied too heavily on magic, leaving him as fragile as a strand of noodle. After several days of training, Geo revealed that the commander would re-enter the tournament, as the king wanted him to serve as a mountain for the next generation to surpass. Arwen then felt demoralized, believing the commander was beyond their capabilities. Yet, the 2 girls ignored his doubts and continued to train. The next morning, Arwen found Geo asleep and roused him. Arwen learned that Elise was also striving to improve, determined not to become a burden, which reignited his spirit. He joined the girls in training and apologized for his earlier self-doubt. Finally, the day of the tournament arrived. The 2 knights urged the group to give their all, promising that if they lost, they could return to watch. In the first match, they encountered the final boss and were swiftly knocked out. Arwen returned to the knights, praying his friends wouldn't be eliminated so quickly. After a fierce battle, Louis was the first to be eliminated in the semi-finals. Tina, outside, confronted the young man known as Justice, realizing he had no openings. After being knocked away, she had to concede defeat. Tina returned to inform the group that the fierce fighter was Justice, skilled in both combat and strategy as the son of a merchant. Arwen had made it to the finals, facing off against the Knight Commander. However, Arwen had injured his hand and was advised against continuing. Yet, he remained determined. The 2 girls presented Arwen with a lunchbox made by Geo to encourage him. Seeing it, Arwen took a piece shaped like himself to eat and pressed on. He chose to fight rather than flee. Just days later, the group had mentors to aid in their training. Geo was accompanied by Louis, while Armstrong became their teacher. He aimed to train Geo, knowing he was the weakest without magic. 3 years passed, and Geo's elder brother held a strong disdain for him, rejecting all correspondence related to Geo being sent to him and his friends. Now, they had matured and officially became adventurers. Bran brought news of a new mission from the king to explore a dungeon. The group set off with Bran, who supervised their journey. He explained that ever since the dragon was slain, Strange occurrences had begun. Several teams had entered but failed to return, indicating dangers within. After traveling for a while, they entered a room and discovered a door. Suddenly, they were transported to a different area. When Elise awoke, Louis suggested she use a teleportation spell to escape. However, she needed to know her location first. So the group began walking. They stumbled into a room filled with mechanical golems. The golems began to awaken and attacked. The three friends fought valiantly, proving their training had paid off. The room was soon cleared. Yet, more golems from another floor approached, and they had to continue fighting. 5 days passed, and above them, rumors spread that Gio and his group had perished. As their strength waned, the group reached a larger room and battled the golems, successfully overcoming them. But in the final room, they faced a golem dragon. Exhausted, both Ran and Gel held the line against it, while behind them, the golems attacked, injuring Tina. Elise had to use her healing magic, while Bran decided to transfer all his magic to Gel. As he transferred all his energy, he collapsed, but Gel still struggled against the dragon. In a moment of desperation, Elise kissed him, sharing the last of her magic. With her power, he pushed back and ultimately defeated the dragon. The Lem Golem army finally ceased its movements. The group had to carry the unconscious ones away. When Leo awakened, he joined Elip to meet Brand. He revealed that this place was created by a count as a trial for intruders, and the reward was a fleet of airships. The exit was right there, and the group could finally head home. Leo later sold the airships to the king. Both the Lem Golem army and the dragon contributed their magical essence to power them up. The kingdom would pay each person 2 million gold coins, dispersed over 20 years. With that, they could feed 3 generations. Upon returning, Armstrong mentioned he would investigate the rumor that Gel had died. Leo also stated he would leave the capital to expand the rift further. The friends decided to return the bounty to Gel, realizing that hoarding too much money could be a burden. Since they were all well off, it made sense. Gel was contemplating who could keep an eye on his mansion while he was away. They unanimously agreed to invite the young man, Crazy Iron Fist, for the job, as he was a master at management. As the son of a merchant, Crazy Iron Fist was thrilled to be invited and accepted the position. They gathered to eat, and Louis noticed someone was watching them, but when he checked the window, the figure had vanished. Crazy Iron Fist decided to take on the mission of investigating for Gao. The girl who had been watching dashed into the street, discarding her black cloak, while Gao's group arrived at the Adventurers Guild. This place had purchased a teleportation device for research, and when he entered, he learned that this machine could summon people based on his imagination. He had to visualize it in great detail. Arwen remarked that those perverts would love this. That distracted Gao, who accidentally summoned Pantsu, the research assistant, who had punched him for taking her belongings. He then tried again and left with the whole group. Everyone complained about the foul smell of the device, so Gao teleported straight home to avoid it. Meanwhile, Crazy Iron Fist had been investigating the person spreading false information about Gao and seemed to have found the mastermind. At the end of that day, Gao hosted a banquet, inviting those he knew and owed gratitude to. He presented them with tuna he had just prepared, with a dipping sauce that took him 3 years to perfect. Crazy Iron Fist returned and informed him that he had identified the one behind the rumors. It was the brother of the commissioner and Crazy Iron Fist's father. However, since his mother was a concubine, he was never acknowledged, which made him harbor resentment toward his father. He had spread rumors that it was the father who slandered Gao, leading to an investigation by the state. When the truth comes to light, everything would be clear. The girl who had been spying all day could no longer hold back and rushed straight to Gao, shoving Arwen aside to grab some fish to eat. The general revealed she was the daughter of his subordinate. Bra noticed the girl had a syndrome that caused her to constantly emit magical energy to enhance her body, thus needing to eat a lot to replenish her mana. A nobleman wanted to entrust his daughter as Gao's bodyguard, but in truth, he hoped Gao's fortune could support his daughter for life. Louis and Tina delighted in caring for Gunma, ready to spoil the little one. Yet Gao Wax Coconut had to leave the capital, so no need for the noble's daughter as guard. Then the count arrived with a request for Gao. Meanwhile, Gao's eldest brother received a fake letter claiming Gao was dead and his son would inherit Gao's estate. He wept in fake sorrow, but secretly smiled. Right then, Rio and his team returned. They held a family meeting. Lao came because the count had sent many men into the dark forest to cleanse the corpses there. The count's grandfather had entered but never returned. They needed to retrieve his remains for burial and cleanse the forest to prevent the dead from rising as demons. Zhao's eldest demanded a share of the payment before agreeing. He kept acting like a jerk, forcing everyone to speak up since Gao now held a higher position than him. After the meeting, the eldest rallied the townsfolk, warning them not to trust Gao, claiming his return was temporary and he would soon be ousted. That night, they dined at the eldest brother's home, warmly welcomed by his wife. Unlike the eldest, this brother carried a gentler heart and believed it was only natural that Gao, suddenly leaving and returning as a known figure, faced resentment. When his sister-in-law heard Gao was set to cleanse the forest, she asked him to purify her grandfather as well. The next morning, the group ventured into the woods to perform the cleansing ritual, summoning the restless dead by speaking ill of them. Though their consciousness was gone, the spirits still felt the sting of slander. Then, Elip created a magical purification circle. Anyone stepping inside would be cleansed instantly. They soon located the count's great-grandfather and purified him. Suddenly, a dragon soared in, but it wasn't cleansed right away. Gunma struck a single decisive blow, severing the dragon's head, and only then was it purified. But the cursed beasts, twisted from corpses, kept coming. Whoever slipped through was swiftly struck down to weaken the horde. Before long, they had defeated the threat. Yet, the sister-in-law's grandfather remained. He had become a demon, but kept his awareness. Upon learning his granddaughter was happy, he found peace and passed on. They returned the belongings to the villagers. The eldest brother demanded they take all the refuse, desperate for iron. But they needed that method to bury the dead properly. So Gao handed over a piece of iron to the eldest in exchange for armor for the villagers, though bitter. The eldest accepted and waited for Gao to leave. Gao then went to return the slippers to the count, who wished for him